Chiefs Kingdom. Welcome in to the latest Out of Structure podcast on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Welcome into the Chiefs' sixth straight Victory Monday, Victory Tuesday, I guess. We're recording this on the site. I guess we've had a Victory Friday mixed in there, Stags. So whatever day it is, the Chiefs are winning. They've been winning lately, haven't lost since week one. Their latest win was the 31-17 win over the Chargers. I'm Ron Kopp Jr., the lead analyst at the site, arrowheadpride.com. With me, as usual, Matt Stagner, writer at the site as well. Stags, welcome in, my friend. How are you doing today?
Hey, buddy, doing well. This sixth straight win was arguably their best one of the season.
I'd say so. It was the most fun. Wouldn't you say so? The Bears game was fun. First appearance of T Swift. Does that factor into your fun? How fun it was to you, Stags? How fun the game was?
Hey, I mean the celebration dance was pretty sweet this week. That was a big deal.
Got to give him credit there. It's
been great. This is probably the more complete game. I mean, the Bears game was fun just because it was a complete and total blowout. But this one, they faced a little bit of competition, especially in the first half, and they just managed to pull away and put together a tremendous defensive second half of the game. And obviously, huge performances out of Mahomes and Kelsey. And that was really, to get to 31-17 against a team that is always down to the final drive, final play. This was a nice change there.
Yeah, no, this is the first time the Chiefs have beaten the Chargers by more than a score in the Brandon Staley era, which could be coming to an end pretty soon. We'll get into that a little later specifically, but no, this was a fun game, Stags, and I wasn't there. I missed out on what could have been one of my favorite Arrowhead moments, I think, of the season in a while, maybe even, when in the fourth quarter, one-score game, 24-17, Chiefs get a stop, and Mecole Hardman's back there to receive the punt, catches it, dashes upfield, makes a move, gets to the sideline, gains 50 yards on the return. I had goosebumps. I was feeling a little emotional for Mecole there. He obviously going through, where he wasn't being used in New York, almost feeling probably wasted, with the obvious talent he has. I mean, we all know he has some sort of talent, Stags. It was cool to see him make a play. I don't know. How are you feeling when you kind of saw number 12 dash up the field?
I had a feeling that he would make a play or two. Like this just felt like a very logical reunion. The Chiefs needed a guy who could be a playmaker. They were a little bit lacking on the speed as compared to what they've had in previous years. They had Richie James get hurt. So obviously they're missing their returner, and Washington kind of wasn't exactly panning out the way that they had hoped. So this was a really obvious reunion and a happy one. It really seemed like the players were excited to have him back. So yeah, I had a feeling he would do something. I wish they could have connected on that one long pass that ended up as an interception. That was probably one of the low lights of the game. The rest of the game was pretty sweet. That catch he had on third down on the key drive in the fourth quarter was big.
Yes.
And then obviously that punt return was electric. And to have a guy like that can just put his foot in the ground, get uphill, and go, in a really, just a tremendously rare burst of speed. The way that he goes when he makes one cut and goes, it's unique. It's not Tyreek Hill, but it's the next best thing.
Right, and you mentioned it off the top that they just don't have that really in the receiver room. One of the things they're missing with Justin Watson's injury is actually, top end speed. Burning speed down the field. It's why Mecole was running that vertical route, like you mentioned. He got that was the interception. Mahomes was just late to it. Didn't put enough on it as well. So, but it was cool
at the time, right? He wasn't able to.
He might have been, yeah. But he and we'll get into it with when we talk about it later. But he did miss MVS. He could have just hit MVS over the middle on that. But that's okay. And Pat, it was one of the only times he kind of was a little too hungry or a little too risky with it. But
I mean, yeah, Mahomes was near perfect in this game. Like there was not much more that you can ask for, especially in that first half. I think he had, near a career high in passing yardage in one half, over 300 in the first half. Slowed down the second half, but it was still very efficient. Got the job done down the stretch when they needed it. 4 touchdowns helped my fantasy football teams, at least a couple of them. It was a banner day for Mahomes and for Kelsey.
Yeah, your fantasy team probably needed a little help after losing by 0.1, was it, to my team a couple weeks ago? We didn't let the people know about that.
Oh,
that was brutal. Hilarious.
That was brutal.
That was brutal. But Mahomes' first half stats, you're right. He barely missed. He was 20 of 23, 321 yards, 3 touchdowns. Had the interception in the first half. So one of his incompletions was that pick, and 140 passer rating. And we'll talk about the offense a little more later.
140 passer rating with an interception. You're doing something.
Yeah,
that's doing something really right.
That's a good point. Yeah. So no, it was a fun game. The major bummer coming out of it, right, is the Nick Bolton injury. The leader of the group, after kind of dealing with some injuries, early in the season, obviously that forced him out. This one looked painful. He went down, screaming. And it was a dislocated wrist is what it ended up being, but he does need surgery. So he's out for 2 months, Stags. That's what they say. He's expected to be back sometime in December. I don't know, man. What are your kind of thoughts as we kind of, we know Drew Tranquill can fill in, but I mean, this is a little more longer of a term thing than maybe the last time we banked on this happening.
Yeah. First of all, I don't know that I've ever heard of a dislocated wrist, but I can imagine that would be very painful. Having surgery out 2 months. I mean, maybe he comes back even with a cast. I would have heard that at a couple different places. We'll see what that means. But if he's out for all of November, essentially, and part of December, it does make you really glad they signed Drew Tranquill, especially on as cheap a deal as they got him. He immediately came in and made plays, immediately was lining people up where they needed to be, got a sack against this old team. I mean, he's been a tremendous addition this season. You sure like to have that entire room together, but you feel like they can make up for the loss of Bolton more seamless than just about any other position that had an injury. Can you think of another position on the team that if they lost the top guy, that the second guy would be less of a drop off?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, you talk about corner just because the second guy is McDuffie, but you obviously have multiple corners on the field at all times. We're talking about one sole position of middle linebacker. And so, I think obviously Tranquill is a playmaker against both the run and the pass, but Bolton's going to give you a little bit more of that juice, downhill against the run. Against a team like they're coming up against the Dolphins, they're going to be running, a lot of those gap runs where they're trying to get explosive plays. That's where Bolton's going to, Bolton would have came in huge, been a huge advantage, kind of shooting gaps, making sure tackles. Tranquill can do it too, but I think that's, Tranquill probably just for what he lacks in that department, he probably makes up on Bolton and maybe, getting running back and kind of defending in coverage, although Bolton had the interception dropping, just a few weeks ago. So,
yeah, they're very different players, but you could look at it as a potential strength of Tranquill going forward. Be curious to see if Bolton. I didn't hear an IR announcement. Did you? Was there talk about him going on IR? Because with the new rules, that's 4 games. I mean, what's the likelihood he's back within 4 games?
It's a good question. I mean, 2 months is obviously more than 4 games. So maybe we're just waiting on
the math here.
Yeah, get back with me on that one. Carry the 7. Just on Saturday, probably maybe we'll see some sort of move where, some practice squad guy gets the roster up or however they played. I'm sure it's coming, but we do have to talk about. We did bear the lead a little bit, Sags, in the bummer category. And this is a much more of a bummer. Chiefs wide receiver Justin Ross was in the news because he was arrested on Monday afternoon, actually around like 4:30 p.m. for criminal. I got it in front of me here. Criminal. I don't want to misspeak, Stags. Criminal property damage, right? Initially reported at above $25,000. But we have gotten the facts now here. We're sitting here Tuesday. We know a little bit more here. He has officially been charged with domestic battery after having no priors. and criminal property damage, although that is in a value below $1,000. So that changes it. It's not felonious anymore. These are misdemeanor crimes, Stags. So we're looking at Justin Ross here all of a sudden, a guy that was promising, a guy a lot of people were counting on to maybe be an ascending player. I don't know. What were your initial thoughts when you heard the news?
It's obviously very disappointing, and this is probably my least favorite football topic to discuss.
Yeah.
Is domestic violence, because there's no place for it. There's no excuse for it. You can't make light of it. There's no two ways around it. I mean, it is a situation that is bad all the way around, and there's no way to sort of justify it by saying, "Wow, he's a promising player, so we can overlook it." It does seem like that's sort of how things work in the NFL. That the better the player, the more they can put up with from these types of situations. Unfortunately, it's been around the Chiefs organization quite a bit. It's something that the Chiefs have had to deal with, that they've been open to giving players a second chance, open to being patient with folks, willing to take the heat from the general public on situations like this. So, Justin Ross is probably better off in Kansas City than anywhere else when something like this happens. But I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I think obviously we have to wait for all the details. We got to wait to see, what the facts of the case are. It's certainly possible that it was a, not as bad as it sounds, but we have to assume the worst at this point and assume that, he did what he's accused of. And in that case, he's probably going to miss some time. He's probably going to miss some time due to the league. And the Chiefs are going to have a decision to make. And I don't know how the team evaluates that situation. I assume that it has a lot to do with some things that will never be made public.
Well, it is a similar situation to Willie Gay, right? We've seen this. It's actually very similar in terms of the criminal property damage under $1,000. That's, I think, exactly what Gay was charged with, because his was a vacuum cleaner, correct? He used in a threatening manner in a domestic violence situation. He was suspended for that. The problem here, though, as Sam McDowell of the Kansas City Star tweeted earlier today on Tuesday, Chiefs receiver Justin Ross has been charged with domestic battery and criminal property damage after a victim told a police dispatcher Ross was dragging her through the home, according to dispatch audio. And so that's where, innocent until proven guilty is completely true. But yeah, whenever we hear those kind of details where we don't, like you just mentioned, don't always get them, that's when it usually, things happen actually quicker than other times when there's not as many details. And that little detail might be enough. So I don't know. We don't need to talk too much more about it, but go ahead.
Yeah, if you go back through the history of Chiefs players in this type of situation, Charles Omenihu just came off of a suspension for domestic violence. You mentioned Willie Gay Jr. with very similar charges. You had a situation with Frank Clark that was maybe not a similar charge, but other charges off the field.
Yeah.
You have the Dwayne Bowe and Sonic, right? There's been a lot of Chiefs players with arrest history in our time. Obviously, the absolute worst scenario, the worst example, was the Javon Belcher incident, which is just probably one of the saddest moments in the history of the league. What happened with Javon Belcher back in, was it 2012?
12, yeah.
Yeah. So, and but they've dealt with them all differently. And again, that's why I think they're going to look at the details of the case and try to make a rational judgment based on, all the factors involved. You look at the Kareem Hunt situation. That's one a lot of people are going to compare it to. That's something that there was actually video out there of what Kareem Hunt did, and he was pretty promptly and unceremoniously released from the Chiefs after his incident. But famously, because he was not upfront with the team, he lied about it. And I think, I don't know what level of trust Justin Ross has built with this team or how he's handling this situation. I think that will tell you as much as anything else as far as how the team's going to take it, is how he handles himself from the moment this incident occurred on.
Yeah, no, I believe in second chances. But the last thing I do want to say here is that I think, this is just another reminder that sports teams, teams with a benefit, a financial benefit to having talented players in their program need to be careful with, just, supporting, abusers, right? I think, Ross, he was a no priors, right? So first time offender, that's, it's just a different situation, but, for people that follow college basketball, KU, recently brought in a basketball recruit that had previously had sexual assault charges. And as he was on campus practicing with the team this summer, he raped a woman. And so to me, like, this is just a reminder that, these athletes like get a lot of leeway. And so, I think the teams just need to be a little more careful about, hey, everyone deserves second chances, but, at the same time, abusers there's nothing around that. And so with Justin Ross, if he really doesn't, if he doesn't show remorse, if he really, if this was signs, if there were signs leading up to this, I don't think the Chiefs and other teams need to be a little more, swift of and not, mess around with it too much. But we can talk some football now, Stags. What do you think about that?
Yeah, again, that's my least favorite thing to talk about in the world of the NFL.
Yeah.
I would much rather talk about Taylor Swift at this point if you want to go there. But
I would too.
But ideally, let's talk a little bit about this last game. We mentioned that it was one of the more fun games of the season, so I'd love to hear some other highlights for you other than the McColl run back, and then we'll talk through some of your Insta breakdown and some of the winners and losers that I had to point out from this week, because it was an interesting game and it was a fairly complete game for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs pass offense had its best game of the year. I mean, you kind of mentioned it off the top, but specifically, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, I mean, they were incredible in the first half. We already mentioned Mahomes' first half stats. Travis Kelce, 9 catches, 143 yards, and a touchdown in the first half. Constantly open over the middle. If you look at Mahomes' spray chart, from NFL Next Gen Stats, that was a place of the field he was struggling this year to complete passes over the middle. He was hesitant and sometimes just inaccurate. Not against the Chargers, and it was because they were not being very careful with how to defend Kelce. I think they were being pretty loose with their zone coverage, allowing Kelce to just kind of find holes to sit in. I
know it's been discussed before, but the fact that he is constantly that open is still, it's unbelievable. It defies all logic when you're watching a game and you just see the best player, the best receiver on offense just roaming free wherever he wants to go.
Well, it's another level of like, how is this possible when the guy who's allowing it to happen, the defensive coach, has defended this exact offense for the past 2-3 seasons, multiple times a year. You would think if anyone knows what they need to do to just at least, not have him have a crazy game like he did on Sunday, it would be the Chargers. It would be a divisional rival. Look at the Broncos. They know how to slow down Kelce in the pass game, and they do it consistently. It's amazing. And that's honestly why I don't think Staley should have a job there anymore. I think he needs to prove himself in another situation, because it's amazing. It's amazing how you can be a defensive coach. And, out of how many times have we seen this Chiefs pass offense struggle this year against other teams? And apparently the medicine was just going against Staley in the Chargers defense. They had Derwin James, they had their pass rushers, and the Chiefs, I mean, just 5 straight scoring possessions, I think, to start the game. Yeah, I mean, it was just, it really was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they made some adjustments in that second half. So, sure, they figured out how to bracket him. And he's still, I think, caught a touchdown, or you're at least made a couple of plays in that second half. So it wasn't like it was impossible. And you're right, he wasn't doing anything different than what he ever does. So you would think the defensive coaches would have some bead on that, but it's just the way that it is out of structure, the way that it is, improvisational, and the way he and Mahomes are in tune. It actually is probably pretty difficult to defend, because it's not like you can draw it up on paper and tell your defenders, all right, when he does this is what's going to happen, because they don't know, and frankly, Kelce doesn't know.
Yeah, but I will say, like someone like Denver, what they would do very well is just have linebackers pretty much just in zone coverage, play man coverage, rough them up at the line, rough them up, even if the ball, even if it's an incomplete, kind of extracurricular things. And maybe the Chargers didn't even get the chance to do that on Sunday. So, shout out Kelsey and Mahomes. On the other side of the ball, Charles Omenihu, shout out him. We just talked about him in a negative way, kind of. But hey, he's someone that is getting the second chance, and he said it was the happiest moment of his life, getting that sack in his Chiefs debut this Sunday. Someone that probably is pretty thankful for his opportunity after kind of going through, again, not being charged, eventually for the issues he had back in January. He had 1 sack, 2 quarterback hits, and then the other pass defended he had turned into an interception. He was kind of doing exactly what we kind of thought he could do, right, Stags? What did you think about the debut from Omenihu?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we were excited about bringing him in. It's because of the complementary way that he adds to this pass rush, and you saw it in this game. Chris Jones was not necessarily popping off the stat sheet.
No,
but if you watch the game, you can see Chris Jones is charging upfield and creating opportunities for Omenihu and others to clean up, and that's a formula for a pass rush that's pretty hard to stop. When you've got guys at all different levels with different skill sets, that are all coming in different ways. Coming down the stretch, it looked like there was no chance that they were going to come back on this Chiefs defense. It just felt like they had enough pressure coming from different places on the defense. And of course, you're getting sacks from Drew Tranquil and others, but like they had 5 sacks from 5 different players this week. And Omenihu just brings a different element, another interior pass rusher. Very few teams have 2 interior pass rushers. And so it really does make it unique and probably difficult to game plan for. He was fantastic in his debut. He really was. Like, that's exactly what you hope to see in the offseason.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned them both being inside pass rushers, and that's my thought coming into the year is, oh man, imagine the front of the pocket. How hard it's going to be to see over the middle of the field if you're a quarterback. Herbert's obviously a taller guy, but just in general. Well, the thing I thought was cool is that they were using them on the same side, and Jones was, rushing from the edge at times. Omenihu was rushing from the edge at other times, but them lining up next to each other on the same side of the ball. Man, what that does, especially if you're doing that to the quarterback's throwing side, where if he's trying to get it to his favorite receiver in a third down situation, and they call something up where to his throwing side he has some sort of route being called up, and it's going to be hard to see anything going on if Jones and Omenihu are rushing over that guard and tackle. That side.
There's no pass lanes there, and there's no line of sight, and then you've got George Karlaftis, who's leading the league in batted passes since he came into the league now.
Yes, sir.
Last year, he was second only to Carlos Dunlap, who's we much speculated to return to the Chiefs along with Frank Clark. We'll see if they end up adding back another veteran just to keep this rotation stout. But it's looking nasty with Omenihu in place, and it's really going to be fun to watch as the season progresses.
Well, let's jump ahead here to the third level of the defense. I feel like we've talked about the defensive line. The defensive line gets so much talk. The pass rush gets so much talk. Chris Jones, but actually wrote for the site this week about the Chiefs pass defense in terms of the back end, the back seven. And actually, I ended up just writing more about the corners and safeties. Linebackers, you've gotten your due too. I think we've all given the linebacker group some love. Obviously without Bolton, we kind of have to figure that out, and we talked about that, but. Man, this Chiefs pass defense is elite because of the coverage execution in the back end. Here's some stats to throw at you guys. The Chiefs are allowing the 3rd fewest net yards per pass attempt, so that does include sacks, right? So net yards take away, sack yardage from pass yards. So that's even with sacks included, the 3rd fewest yards per pass attempt. They also are tied for the 2nd highest team pressure rate in the NFL. So that tells you, that the defensive line is getting home as much as anybody, but they're also have the 3rd most passes defended as a team in the NFL. They're getting their hands on as many balls as anybody. They have all 3 of their safeties have interceptions, which I thought was kind of cool. Brian Cook got his this last game to kind of help seal the Chargers game. How about Justin Reed having the second most PBUs of all safeties in the NFL this year. Only the Eagles' Reed Blankenship has more pass breakups by a safety, and he leads the team. Justin Reed has more pass breakups than any other defender on the Chiefs right now. So let's start there. I mean, how have you seen kind of the playmaking of the safety group, or the defensive back group as a whole, and just kind of what has been your favorite thing to see from it?
I mean, my favorite thing has been the evolution of Trent McDuffie into just a legit top of the NFL type corner. You have a stat here that he had the most forced fumbles by a corner in the NFL with 3. That is something that he's had a knack for this season. He's the way he hits, how physical he is in all aspects of the game. In addition to his he had a pass breakup this week that was, just how you draw it up. I mean, it was textbook. He's been just phenomenal. I love the versatility of L'Jarius Sneed and how many different things that he can do for this defense. I was a little down early in the game on both safeties, actually. When you look at the first half, when the Chargers were able to move the ball, they burned Brian Cook and they burned Justin Reed more than once in those times. But then they certainly both players came back and made plays later in the game. As you mentioned, Cook with the interception. This was a group that's got a short memory, which is impressive for as young as they are to be able to recover. They go through a stretch. You've seen games in the past where the Chiefs couldn't cover anybody. The defenders were running into each other. They didn't know their assignments. They didn't know what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
This group seems to be assignment sound, and when there's a problem, they correct it, and that looks like a mature group for a bunch of second and third year players out there.
Yeah, you remember that last season with Tyron leading the defensive backfield. There's times where you're like, is this supposed to be happening 3 years into the system with Spags? Like, isn't this like, you almost like with the Super Bowl kind of still fresh, you're almost like, should we be criticizing them? Like, maybe this is just, no, are you seeing it now? No, because this team is, much more, it seems like, although they give up the 50-yard touchdown run, I think that was, more on just getting blocked up really well. Mike Edwards didn't come over in time to make that kind of last line tackle defense. And that's where, just to go off your point real quick with Cook, I do think you're right. I think Edwards is the better pass defense free safety, but I think Brian Cook is maybe the more trusted down-to-down safety still, and that's why you're kind of seeing them rotate back and forth, because you've seen Cook make some really important tackles, including that big play against the Chargers. Obviously, he gets burned, but he doesn't allow the touchdown to happen. Spags actually talked about how big that is, not letting that big play turn into an even bigger play. Because if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but they may not have scored. I think they did score that, actually. I think they did end up scoring on that drive. But obviously earlier in the season, that Jets run, right, Breece Hall, he makes that tackle. They don't score a touchdown on that drive. So just a good example there. But I do want to talk about how they've been using the cornerbacks. We talked about Trent McDuffie. They've been trusting him to single up on the team, on a team's wide receiver, on a team's second wide receiver for the most part, because a lot of times situationally, whether it's the red zone, whether it's third down, what they've been doing is bracketing the team's number one wide receiver, letting someone play main coverage on him, then putting a safety, usually Cook actually, letting him kind of come down and purposefully double team and kind of bracket inside the cornerback's outside leverage, and kind of, just taking away a Keenan Allen like this last week. I actually tweeted out a pretty good video where George Karlaftis' sack, if you watch Herbert, he goes through 2 reads and he kind of has to just sit there and wait for the sack to come, because once he goes to his first read, not kind of there, Willie kind of takes it away. He comes back to his second read, which is Keenan Allen, and the double team is so effective and so closed in and so well done down the field. It's like, 15, 20 yards down the field at this point. Herbert just kind of just is frozen. Like, he thinks he's going to try to fit it in somewhere, but he just can't, because Cook and actually Jalen Watson, shout out Jalen Watson, is the one covering Allen on this play, double teamed him so well. They've been doing that all year, whether it's Justin Jefferson, Calvin Ridley. Actually, if you remember that Jacksonville game, when they succeeded in the red zone so well, it was because they were hammering those double teams, taking away Ridley. McDuffie had those, those great pass breakups, at the back of the end zone on Zay Jones, singled up, right? They trusted him to single up and take him away. And he does that because it's the old Patriots thing, right? Like, if we put our best cover corner on your secondary guy, a la Stephon Gilmore and Sammy Watkins, right? We always said that kind of thing. Like your secondary guy is never going to beat our best corner, and then your best guy is not going to beat a double team. So what are you supposed to do? And that's what the Chiefs defense is doing right now.
It's nice to be on the other side of that from the Chiefs' perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Tyreek getting doubled, Sammy getting the Gilmore treatment. That was rough in that AFC Championship game.
Well, speaking of the other side, we're going to get to your questions. As a reminder, this is a weekly podcast. We look for your questions every week to give us something fun to talk about. It can be Chiefs related, not Chiefs related, whatever. We certainly appreciate those. So keep submitting those on the X Twitter or email them to apoutofstructure@gmail.com. Ron will check that email occasionally and get us some good questions. But let's take a break, hear something from our sponsors, and play the game that we love to play every week here. I can't remember what it's called, but what NFL player am I, Ron?
Yeah, crossover grid NFL, shout out, immaculate grid, fun game. Still played every once in a while. Definitely lost its luster after it was hot at first. But this week, Stags, you weren't here last time we did a Chiefs and Broncos player, which was only a couple weeks ago. I'll tell you, it was Peyton Hillis. If you remember, he was a short-term Chief and Bronco, most known for his Browns days. But here today, we have another player that played for both the Chiefs and the Broncos. He was drafted by Kansas City very high and became an all-pro defender in the 90s, but then left for Denver at one point and became a Pro Bowler there. And the last hint I'll give you is he ended up helping the Broncos spoil KC in a playoff game. Unfortunately, bad memories. We'll talk about who that is on the other side. All right, we are back here on the Arrowhead Pride Out of Structure podcast. Appreciate you joining us. I asked Stags about a Chiefs player that also played for the Broncos, not named Peyton Hillis. And the last clue I gave you, Stags, he ended up spoiling a playoff run for the Chiefs. Did that give it away?
That part didn't as much. I'm going to throw out a guess here. And again, I thought you were just going to say somebody who played for the Broncos and the Chiefs and then leave it at that and make me guess. Because if that was the only clue, I still would have guessed this player. And then after your hints, I was going to guess this guy. So was it Big Neil Smith?
Yes, sir. Big Neil Smith. He is the most famous crossover Chiefs Bronco for sure.
So I almost brought him up earlier because seeing Charles Omenihu back on the field, a big number 90 with a big wingspan, there was a little bit of shade of a young Neil Smith there. Seeing him play.
Like that.
So I don't remember, how did he spoil the playoff game? For some reason, I'm drawing blank on that one.
He left in 96, went to Denver in 97. Chiefs 1 seed that year, obviously, and that was the year the Broncos came into Arrowhead in the divisional round, and won. It was the next playoff game after the Lynn Elliott game. The Elway. I think the famous thing in that game, right, was the offensive pass interference on Tony G. I think that's what it was that really cemented the loss. But yeah, Neil Smith. It was his first year in Denver, and he came in and ruined the Chiefs 1 seed. Potential Super Bowl run. So
must have put a mental block on that one. There's so many painful years in there.
Smart.
So let's get to some mailbag question. First from RL Health and Fitness Coach at Rocket Dad 82. Did the Chiefs figure it out on offense, or was it that the Chargers were playing soft coverage?
Well, we talked about it a little earlier. I definitely blame a lot of the easiness on Staley. I mean, if you look at the Bears game earlier in the year, it was kind of similar, right, where Kelsey was just like randomly wide open a lot, and you're like, can you not cover him? Well, if you look at that game, the linebackers just looked like they had no idea. They were just playing like Madden coverage, right, where they're just dropping where they should, like if they were walking through the play and like there's nothing else happening and like nothing is forcing them to move and the Chargers were doing a similar thing. Honestly, I looked at the defense all 22. I haven't looked at the offense, but I think honestly though it was more Mahomes being very, very patient and confident in like the routes developing. And it's not something that's like new for him. Obviously he's done this his entire career, but it is something that I feel like he was kind of being impatient for a lot of this year with routes developing, and we blamed it a lot on the receivers, right? We blamed it a lot on the receivers, not getting open, and it is some of that. That's why he's maybe a little timid. But I feel like in this game, which again, a familiar opponent, I think that does play into it a little bit. He kind of is very confident against how the Chargers want to defend him. He really was patient. On the first drive, I think Kelce had like a 30-yard catch where Mahomes kind of stepped up in the pocket, kind of made the linebackers draw to him, and then just poof, flicked it right over their heads, and Kelce took off with it. If you look at the MVS touchdown, he goes through a few reads, escapes the pocket, kind of sees MVS running into open space and kind of leads him right into, where it's going to be a touchdown. That's him, when the play's not there, finding the play to be there, making space for it. And obviously the scrambles that he's had. I mean, he had the big scramble on the 1 3rd down. So I think a lot of it too was Mahomes playing with much more patience and confidence, confident patience, I guess is the way I want to put it, because, it wasn't just the patience. It was, delivering the throw once he was done being patient and making the play with confidence.
Yeah, I don't want to put an asterisk next to this offensive performance. I think they executed. Mahomes was nearly flawless again, especially in the first half. This was a good all-around offensive performance. The offensive line was good. The receivers were better. Rashee Rice is still coming on,
yes,
in a big way. Travis Kelce was incredible. MVS making plays really does make a difference for this offense. I had him this week in market movers as I was bearish on him. I haven't seen a lot of playmaking from him this season whatsoever, but the way that this offense looks whenever you can hit a 49-yarder to MVS really opens things up. It really gives you that extra dimension. The big plays were there, which is what really makes this offense dangerous. When they can dink and dunk and still be the best offense in the league, but they're far and away the best offense in the league when they're hitting deep passes. And so when they have all different dimensions there, the only thing that wasn't awesome this week was the run game. But even so, when Pacheco got a chance, he was good. It wasn't that he played poorly at all. So I think it was a good all-around offensive performance. No reason to qualify it by saying the Chargers were bad. Yeah, they were bad, but that's also one of the best pass rushes in the NFL. But number one in terms of sacks, I think, coming into this game, if I remember right. They have a number of guys that can hurt you getting after the passer there, and they, really let Mahomes feel comfortable throwing the ball. Therefore, everything else works.
No, that's a good point that I did fail to mention that. Yeah, he was able to be patient too, because he was clean for the most part. There were a few times obviously he had to make his way and make get out of the pocket, but shout out Nick Christensen. He made me laugh. He was watching the film and he just could not believe how just Joey Bosa just does not look good to him, and I think there is something to that where Joey Bosa may not be the same kind of player he used to be, but Tua Pelotu, the rookie, is a very good rusher. Khalil Mack obviously had 6 sacks in one game. You don't do that on accident. And so, yeah, I think there was some good pass protection. Shout out the offensive line for keeping Mahomes clean. He didn't get sacked until late in the 3rd quarter. So shout out them. Should we go to Jake's question? I like this question, Matt.
At Jake Burnell, our guy. Some players are remembered for a play that highlights their skill set. Which Chief should most fans closely associate with that one play? He's got A, B, and C here, but I kind of think we should open this up and make it not multiple choice, but this could be a fill in the blank. What Chief should be most closely associated with one play that highlighted their skill set throughout the Chiefs' history? Just go with that.
Yeah, I mean, there is an obvious answer. I mean, obviously he goes. I mean, for his options, he goes. McCole Hardman jet sweep, right? Joe Valerio for the old school guys, tackle eligible, yeah. Right? Everyone knows that. Honestly, I'm not aware of the Eric Hicks bootleg. You lost me on that one. I was a little young. I was a little young for that one. Probably known for chasing down bootlegs. I'm gonna guess.
Sure, maybe.
So yeah, no. The thing obviously that comes to mind is Tyreek with jet chip wasp, right? Him running the wasp route, because that really is a perfect Tyreek route, because the way it lays out is, him running, inside so hard with his speed and threatening that safety. Like when he pivots back out, like it just creates so much room, and only he's going to create that much room because he's threatening so hard inside. And so I like that one. I don't know. Did any come out to you? I mean, I have a celebration.
When I saw the Eric Hicks bootleg, I thought Steve Bono and the bootleg, the famous naked bootleg where he ran for 76 yards and a touchdown, I believe it was.
Oh yeah,
that one. I mean, you'd rather have him do that than throw the ball, probably, given his career. I mean, maybe that was a little bit of a low blow, but yeah, that one came to mind. I think Dexter McCluster's punt return against the Chargers in the rain with the 2 spins. That was like the one, basically the one highlight of his career in the NFL or with the Chiefs. I don't feel like I'm throwing too much shade here, but those were iconic moments that I was thinking about.
Dexter had a couple punt returns for touchdowns at home. Let's not forget.
Well, now I always think of the Tony Moriarty catch because I was there.
Yes.
That was one that was the best catch I've ever seen in person for sure. But he just had that one play and that was it.
I'll say like Jared Allen with his little play action Y fade when he would come in. We had that 1 year we just kept throwing him passes into the end zone, pulling the old. He was JJ Watt before JJ Watt. People forget that. Shout out Jared Allen.
Then after him it was Mike Vrabel. So
Yeah, there we go. We did use Vrabes in that way, didn't we? Let me think. Only other one I can think of. I mean, if you want to go old school, Mike Garrett, 65 toss power trap. Pretty sure he was the one who scored on that in the Super Bowl. It's gonna bust wide open. Hank Stranger.
Yeah, there's. I'm sure we're missing some here, but there was certain plays that if you had to draw up a playbook for the Chiefs throughout history, there's certain plays that you would only have one player run. And, obviously Mahomes, I don't know which one you'd give Mahomes because there's so many, but maybe the quarterback scramble going back to that Titans run.
So let me ask you this, and we'll move on after this. If you wanted one guy to throw a goal line fade to, Chiefs history, wide receiver, not Tony G. Is there anyone that comes to mind? I think there's one guy that comes to mind, and I'm confident. I'm gonna say Dwayne Bowe. I think Dwayne Bowe is that guy.
That's where I was gonna go. I like his. What was that one catch with the on one foot, kind of bobbling it around?
Oh man, that was great.
Is that against the Colts? If I
remember right? Yes,
that one was fun. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we're misreading the question just a little bit because we're talking about a play, and I think Jake was talking about like a category of plays.
Right.
But
that's what I was trying to get to. I was trying to get to that. It's hard. It is hard. I mean,
who would you give the screen pass, the running back screen pass to?
Man, that's a good one. I mean, Jamal's the obvious answer. He had 5 touchdowns in one game. Yeah, 4 of them, I think, came on the screen pass.
But the pitch is Priest Holmes.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're running like student body right, you're running it with Priest and you're running it with that 0-3 offensive line, and I mean you're getting it done. Yeah, I mean if you're talking about one run play, I think Chiefs fans would remember like the 2003 offensive line with power toss right or toss power right, because I mean they just ran the heck out of that. Just toss it real quick and just mauling guys down the field as they went into the end zone.
I also used to love how Marcus Allen would not be the biggest guy on the field, but like you put him in around the goal line and he just finds a way, just finds an opening. So I don't know what play that call that is, but it's Marcus Allen in short yardage.
Touchdown play.
All right. Kyle Seitz at Aim Down Sights. Who is the best off-season acquisition this year? Draft, trade, or free agency? Now, I'm going to leave off the second half of this question, just let you answer it pure.
I know. I mean, I love this question. I mean, it is a thinker because, I mean, shout out Veach. He killed it with the offseason, I would say. To me though, you really do have to say Drew Tranquill, in my opinion, just because of the impact he's made. He leads the team in quality tackles, or PFF calls them stops, which basically is a tackle that constitutes a failure for the offense. He leads the team in those. He's the most impactful defender on a snap-to-snap basis right now because Bolton's been hurt for a lot of the season. Obviously when Bolton's been in, he hasn't been able to do it as much, but I mean, when he's been called upon, he has really helped this defense be what we just talked about earlier, an elite. I call it an elite pass defense, but this defense is just, one of the elite units in the NFL this year. And so he's been a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's and Kyle makes this point with the Nick Bolton injury. Tranquill's about to make his case for it. So going forward, you could argue that. I would argue going forward, Charles Omenihu might make his case as well.
Yeah.
But to date, so far, I'd almost go with Rashee Rice because this wide receiver group is desperate for somebody to step up.
That's a good point.
To be that guy. And for it to be a rookie, second-round pick, maybe not even the second-round pick that most fans or experts would have thought or wanted to see the Chiefs take, that's a pretty impressive start for Rice. And he's been really, really important to these games when the passing game works. I mean, it's a lot because of Rashee Rice.
That's a good point, honestly. That you made that point because the linebacker group would probably survive, right? Maybe without Tranquill, better than the receiver room would survive without Rice. So I like your point there. You might have swayed me.
Thomas Ramirez, our guy, was MVS just invisible to us and to Mahomes? I feel like he was just open and missed. I assume he's talking about that one play where the interception was thrown and MVS looked like he was open. I feel like you could just talk to him about the whole season here. Like, why has MVS been so invisible year to date until this game? Was he not open or was Mahomes just missing him? And then again, obviously that one play being emblematic of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've speculated that, and I think it's been noticeable that Mahomes likes to throw to Justin Watson more downfield. He trusts him more, it seems like. And so a lot of times, in my opinion, it seems like MVS is running maybe the secondary deep route that's like almost not really supposed to get targeted, but it's more supposed to like push the safety one way and open up, Watson or, I noticed in a few games where, Watson was getting like the primary route, like how the play is going to develop. Watson's going to be getting this pass on 3rd and 15. We saw that in the Vikings game a couple times. Like those were designed, Watson was the primary go-to target on those, and MVS was more of like a decoy. And so, I do think I speculated, and it is speculation, I have no idea, but like I think Mahomes just liked throwing to Watson more, and just like maybe in the meetings was like, hey, like when you call this up, run it to where, Watson's the one getting the pass. Like, MVS has, been up and down with his catching at times, although I think this year he's been very strong with it. And so I think this game is a good game for maybe him to earn some of that trust back. Because you saw him, make multiple plays. There was another play where Mahomes scrambled out to the left, kind of threw back across his body downfield, and MVS was the target, kind of finding room downfield. So yeah, I think maybe it was more so just Watson, taking advantage of his opportunities. But now that maybe MVS is the main deep threat target and McCole or somebody else might be more the decoy guy, maybe we'll see MVS pop out more.
We can speculate a lot, but like we thought early in the season, they were just throwing all the young wide receivers out there and seeing who can make a play. It could be that they know what they have in MVS, and Mahomes was just focused on trying to get some of the younger players involved and see what they had there. You hate to think of the first 5 games of the season like preseason in that scenario, but there could be some truth to the way that they were spreading the ball out, how few targets MVS has been getting. He is a low volume player always. Like he just generally gets a couple catches a game. They just happen to be big plays because that's what he does. So if his volume went down even further, then obviously the production hasn't been there. On that one play, though,
yes,
what happened? You called that out as well. You said you thought he missed MVS on that play.
Yeah, and I it's always nice to hear the confirmation from Mahomes. Is very good about when he misses something, he'll explain it in the post game, and it's kind of funny. It's almost just his way of just like letting you know exactly why it didn't work that way, right? And I think a lot of Chiefs players don't do that. So shout out Mahomes for that. But yeah, basically, he was just late to it. It's not that McColl wasn't a decent option on that play, but he is late. The ball's a little underthrown, and really what he should have done, he had MVS. So McColl's running down the left sideline, streaking. MVS is running across the middle of the field and does have leverage on his defender. The defender's kind of trailing him. MVS has some space if Mahomes puts it in front of him to kind of run and make a play. So it was just Mahomes, I think, just kind of maybe testing McColl, right? Saying, okay, you know what? Like, the play. And again, if he throws it a little earlier and puts more air under it, I mean, there's a chance McColl did have a step at one point and outruns him to the ball, right? But he just threw it too late, and it was just bad news at that point.
Thomas Ramirez's next question: what was more impressive, the offense finally rolling and showing up, or the defense showing what they can do when they're on it? I think for me, it was the offense really putting it together today. The defense has been there all season. So I don't know that we saw anything new out of the defense. We saw confirmation against a very good offense that this defense is real. But really seeing this offense come together, I thought was the key.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was going to make the point that, I mean, you could make the argument, hey, compared to the other games, this is a disappointing defensive effort, right? I mean, and I'm saying that tongue in cheek because, the games they've played this year, I mean, they've just been so dominant at times, just so overwhelming, just not allowing much to happen. There was a stretch in this game, right, where the defense did, give up some stuff. It looked like, and I think the Chargers, I will say, and you kind of pointed this out earlier, but they did a really good job of attacking, the complementary or the secondary defensive backs in the Chiefs secondary. Joshua Williams, got attacked a few times. Jalen Watson gave up some things, although he had a good play as well on another occasion. Brian Cook, obviously, he's not, he's someone that a second-year player. I think he's still learning. We kind of talked about that. So, yeah, I think it's definitely the offense because, the defense has been so good that, even in a really good game they played, like it wasn't even close to one of their best performances this year.
You bet. And sort of to wrap this all up, Bros_Kingdom, we look great this week. Speaking of the Chiefs, what's next to fix outside of let's just string a few of these games together? So obviously that would be the quick answer is just keep doing what they did this week. If they do that every week, it's going to be a tremendous season. But what are some areas of concern that still remain after seeing this beat down in some ways of the Chargers?
Well, I keep saying the pass defense specifically because, the run defense hasn't, been, great statistically or anything. I think it hasn't been bad, but, losing Bolton for an extended period of time, it is going to call into question, just how good this run defense can be. And I think you're going to see an opponent like the Miami Dolphins attack that. And they also have the Eagles coming up in a few games. And,
who else is starting to run the ball well is Denver.
Well, yeah, no, that's and they were running the ball even going into the last game. I think Denver just was Denver. And so I think there is something there. Bolton was in that game too. I think that's a good point too, that he played against Denver last time. He's not playing against them this time. So, and one of the games when you think about this year, the Chiefs run defense, one of the games have been the more susceptible, the New York game, without Nick Bolton. So I think there is something too. You might see opponents really sell out to run the heck out of the ball, get to third and manageable, be aggressive on fourth and shorts. And, they might have some success if Tranquil doesn't step up as much as Bolton, has at certain points. But I think he can. That's just, I think that's one way you could maybe, find a weakness in this defense is the run defense specifically.
Yeah, it's been a pretty tremendous season, especially considering, we didn't have all the good vibes from this team over the last few weeks. Aaron Schatz on Twitter pointed out the Chiefs are the first team top 5 in all 3 phases as of week 7. First team since the 1999 Rams. Wow. They're number 4 in offense, 5 on defense, number 2 on special teams so far. Thank you, McColl, probably for making that happen. I mean, this is really a pretty well-rounded team that's putting together a heck of a season all the way around. I think they could do more running the ball. I think they've showed it in a couple of games. They've been very effective running the ball, and other games not so much. So some consistency there. Other than that, continue to get turnovers on defense. Maybe protect the ball a little bit better on offense. They had probably more turnovers than they would like to have up to this point. Continue to clean up penalties. Obviously, that was a big issue in one of the games or the two of the games. But they're well on their way to being a well-oiled machine by the time the stretch run comes about.
Yeah, and it is important to note the offense, just because they had this big game against the Chargers, the pass offense still needs to prove more and more about their being able to carry the team in a shootout kind of fashion game, because there were opportunities in this game for the Chargers to come back. The Chiefs defense really held them down. Even though the Chiefs offense scored 31, they were held down in the second half a lot of the time, and so they're you would like to see the Chiefs pass offense do it, and I laugh at Bros Kingdom's question, because I would say that they need to string a few weeks together, but he said not to say that. So let's go for the Chiefs, pass offense, maybe just doing it against a non-familiar opponent, like the Miami coming up. Let's see if they can do it against a non-divisional opponent.
Fair enough. Well, let's get to everybody's favorite segment when Ron previews the upcoming week's game. Ron Stradamus here is going to tell us what happens when the Chiefs take on the Broncos this week.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, Broncos are coming, or the Chiefs are going into Denver, excuse me. The Broncos came into Arrowhead earlier this year. But no, that's the thing. 2 weeks at 2 games against the same opponent in 3 weeks, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what Sean Payton can cook up, being that familiar with the opponent, that fresh. It's not like the Chiefs are going to change up that much. They'll be looking ahead. I mean, this is a trap game, a German trap game, right? What's the German word for trap? Because, this will be, the Chiefs looking ahead to a huge matchup with the Dolphins. They're probably leaving early in the following week to go to Germany. Everyone's making their preparations. Everybody's talking to their families, all that. So, there is a case to be made that, the Broncos have a chance coming with some momentum, right? They did beat the Packers last week at home. They were actually almost blew the game. They were up 16-3 midway through the third quarter, ended up going down 17-16 with 8 minutes to go. They had to lean on a 52-yard field goal to go up and win eventually. But like you mentioned, Denver is running the ball really well. They did it last week. Javonte Williams getting healthier. This Jaleel McLaughlin guy is explosive. So, he's a guy that they contained last time, but, again, without Nick Bolton, maybe there's some more opportunity for Denver to hit some big shots here. So, I think there's a chance Denver can play off of this being a trap game for the Chiefs, especially it being in Denver. It's always kind of the Mile High stuff. It's always kind of, you never know what can happen in the Mile High City stacks.
Well, per Google, trap would be Die Falle in German.
Thank you.
We'll see. That could be wrong. Nobody needs to fact check that one out there. But this is the kind of game that you don't want to overlook. Division opponents, it should never really be that easy, especially when you're on a long streak like the Chiefs are right now. You don't want to jinx it and look past a team like the Denver Broncos, who are probably getting pretty desperate in their season. This was supposed to be a year where they were sort of loaded up to be good, and it hasn't worked out that way at all. They're playing for pride. They're playing for jobs, and so I think they've got a couple of really good running backs that could threaten you. They still have a couple of really good receivers. They finally went downfield to Cortland Sutton this last week, and so that's something that element of the passing game. Russell Wilson throws a nice deep ball usually, so being able to move the ball both through the air and on the ground, that defense has been bad, but they're talented. It wasn't that long ago this was a top defense in the NFL. So I wouldn't take this game lightly, but that it's important for the Chiefs to stay focused and stay on track here.
Yeah, and it's important to note too that the last time they played, the Broncos were coming in on Thursday night. They were the road team. Short week, obviously. That's a lot against you just off the bat, right? Even as a team that's not as good. Now they obviously just have a regular week. They've been home 2 straight weeks. It's their second straight home game, so there's no travel. I think that little stuff does kind of matter in terms of how competitive the game is. And again, I think the Chiefs, they are looking at, there's a chance, human nature, people are looking ahead, especially 6-1, feeling good after just beating up another division team. You just beat up this team. I think there's definitely a chance they get a little more of a scare than they realize.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to listen with us, for submitting your questions and following the work that Ron and the whole team does on arrowheadpride.com. Make sure you like, rate, review, follow, subscribe, all of the above. A lot of good content, a lot of good work being put out there. Thanks again. We look forward to talking to you again next week, hopefully coming off another Chiefs victory.